Hello, Hauntlings! My name is Alyssa.
And I'm Lindsay.
We're Macabre at Midnight, minus the RE.
Join us every week as we discuss and rate anything that fits on our scale of screams.
We like to talk about creepy things, and we want to share them with you. Sometimes it's the paranormal.
Like ghosts or aliens or a cryptid or two.
Sometimes it's just a twisted turn in history. True crime, fact or fiction, the works.
Nope, don't like that.
So if you're a prideful weirdo like us, and you're interested in things that tend to be a little macabre,
This time with the RE.
then check us out wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we will see you in
your
your nightmares.
Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
The following podcast discusses adult situations and gets very sweary. Sensitive ears beware. You're listening to the Fuck My Work Life podcast, where the work stories are real, the laughs are contagious, and all of us can agree that work sucks.
Hello, fuckers. Welcome back to another special bonus episode. Today we are recapping the Severance TV show from Apple TV+. This is episode 5, The Grim Barbarity of Optics and Design. If you've been listening to our other recaps of the show, you know the show is wacky. Hopefully you're watching along. I just heard a few days ago that they wrapped on filming season 2 of this. So super excited to have that coming out, hopefully. I'm guessing it'll probably be next year. I don't know. I don't know how long that shit takes. But excited that we're not going to be left in the dark because this show ends on a crazy cliffhanger. But yeah, so we still got a few more episodes of the first season to recap. This is episode number 5. Go listen to the past 1 through 4 before listening to this one. And then in some other news, before we get into this episode, I'm going to play you guys a promo for the Salon Confessionals podcast. I discovered them. Well, I didn't discover them. A friend of the pod, Dustin Holden from Dustin Can Read and Watch and the Rewatch Recap, actually saw an episode of those pop up in his feed. And he sent it to me because it was all on perimenopause, and I've been bitching about that a lot lately. So he sent me the episode that they did on it, and I was instantly hooked. Jen and Harper go into Jen's nail salon. Harper gets her nails done while they just have completely candid, open, honest discussions on all kinds of topics that affect people. And their one on perimenopause totally got me hooked, and I went back and listened to more. And then recently, I was actually very, very honored to be invited on as a guest to join them in their virtual confessional space. And we talked about career changes in life and just other fuckity-fuck, workity-work stories. And I had such a good time talking with Jen and Harper. They're amazing. They're smart. They're just open and honest and real. And so go check out all of their episodes. They have, like I said, lots of different topics. They've talked about like hair removal, perimenopause, all kinds of just really interesting topics. So we're going to play that promo, and then we're going to get into the recap of Severance episode 5, The Grim Barbarity of Optics and Design. And please, 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 we're getting ready for season 7, I think we're at this point. And we're really looking for your workplace and life stories. So if you got any, send them our way to fmwlpod@gmail.com, or you can leave us a voicemail at 310-818-3273. Love you fuckers. Enjoy the show.
Hey, Confessionista. Come join us in the confessional for Salon Confessions podcast, the podcast that takes place live in my friend Jen's nail studio while she's giving me a manicure. I'm Harper, and in each episode, Jen and I talk about topics related to health, beauty, relationships, and self-care. We have a core belief that taking time to go to the spa or salon and get services is not vanity or frivolous, but really is a core element of self-care. Plus, we get to have great conversations that you don't get to have anywhere else. So come join us in the confessional and get therapatized. It's not therapy in here, but it sure is therapeutic. New episodes every Thursday. See you there.
Here we are. We made it. It's a hot AF. So we have to keep fucking windows and doors closed while recording. So we're going to get through this.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll make it.
So we're here with the next recap of the Severance episode number 5, titled The Grim Barbarity of Optics and Design.
Oh, shit.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So, ready to get into this, Jay?
Yes, Kay. Why, I certainly am.
Okay, so just a really quick refresh. The last episode was super intense and ended on Helly hanging herself in the elevator.
Yeah,
That's where we left off.
that was pretty intense.
Yeah, the last 5 minutes of that episode was very intense. And it picks up in this episode pretty intense too.
Yeah.
All right. So episode 5 opens with Audi Helly. We've got a close up on her face, and Audi Helly, we hear the ding, and she takes over and realizes that she is hanging, and she starts kicking around and trying to save herself. And we get these just shots of just her legs dangling, trying to get a hold of anything.
Shoes coming off.
Yeah. And then we cut to Mark walking down the hall, and he's got that just kind of stupid grin on his face, just doo-doo-doo. And then we see surveillance camera footage of the elevator opening up above the severed floor. And again, we see Helly just kind of kicking and struggling, and it's really grim, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the security guard that's always there isn't there.
Is not there.
Yeah, it just shows his empty chair, which a company like Lumen, I don't know. I feel like if they know people are getting off at certain times, they wouldn't be allowed to leave their desk.
Yeah.
But he's not there, so he can't do anything to help her when the elevator doors open on the unsevered floor. The doors close again, and now we're back to Mark, and he's walking into MDR. He has a quick exchange with Dylan, and then he heads to the elevator to go home. He puts in his key card, and then we cut to Grainer, and it's in slow motion, and he's booking it down the hallway, just running. The elevator doors open, and Mark sees Helly hanging there, and she's kind of unconscious at this point, and he's obviously flustered, and he rushes in, and he's trying to lift her up, and he's screaming for help. And then Grainer finally arrives, and he starts to untie the knots. She's kind of limping out of it, and they put her to the ground in the lobby, and instead of seeing if she's okay, Grainer is getting rid of any evidence that anything happened in the elevator. He's taking down the rope, he's closing the grates on the top, getting the trash can out of there.
Yeah.
So not concerned really for Helly, concerned about
the
look
image.
of yeah.
And then he tells Mark to get in the elevator. Get in.
Get out of here. And he even pushes him in with one finger, kind of pushing Mark back into the elevator with one finger, and Mark's just kind of obeying, but still flustered and looking at Helly. And as the doors close, he asks if she's okay, and then we get that close up on his face. But I think for the first time, every time we've seen him kind of going up from the severed floor back to regular life, he's got that just kind of dumb blank grin on his face, and then when his Audi takes over, it just immediately goes to this depressed face. But for the first time, he's got this just kind of depression in both.
Yeah, it just carries over. The only thing that happens is his eyes close and open back up, and it's the same expression.
Yeah. So he walks out, and then we see the security guard returning to his desk. And, they just kind of tell each other to have a good evening. And then we get the opening credits. The next morning, Mark is heading back down to the severed floor. And then as soon as we hear the ding, he's immediately back in that panic mode of like, holy shit, Helly was trying to kill herself. And the doors open and I'm going to be saying elevator a lot. I feel like in the first 10 minutes of this recap. It's a lot of elevator doors opening and closing.
Yeah.
But the doors open and Middle Dick and Cobell are just sitting in the lobby staring at him emotionless. And he asks if she's alive. And instead of saying yes or no, they just tell him to sit down.
Have a seat, Mark.
And this whole next exchange kind of really packages up the way companies feel about their employees.
Yeah.
So Ms. Cobell says she's in the hospital. She has severe bruising, but thankfully no permanent damage. And Mark says, okay, so you're letting her go. And she's like, Helly's outie has no intention of resigning. And Mark says, but she almost died. Like, she doesn't want to be here. Cobell responds, and she will be back at her desk in a few days. Mark asks if that's enough time.
It reminds me of a bumper sticker that is on like you see him on the little Hondas and stuff. And it says, but you didn't die though, did you?
Jesus.
That's what it reminds me of. Like companies treat you like race car drivers treat a passenger.
Yeah.
I'm going to fucking slide around this corner. And when it's all over and you're scared out of your mind, but you didn't die though, did you?
Yeah. Like she tried to kill herself because she hates it there so much.
Yep.
But she'll be back to work in a couple days.
Yeah.
Mark asks if that's enough time, and Cobell deflects perfectly, saying, this happened on your watch, Mark S., and you can thank Keir himself it went the way he did. And then she's kind of walking out, and she looks back, and she says, have a productive day. No feelings allowed. Get to fucking work.
Yep.
Mark walks back to his desk, and he grabs Rickon's book and takes it to the bathroom, and he starts reading. And they're making it seem like they're reading these very kind of insightful and revolutionary passages from his book. And you kind of just hear Rickon's voiceover, and Mark is in different areas of the office reading some of them. Some of the good ones are, a good person will follow the rules. A great person will follow himself. And at the center of industry is dust. And my favorite one is, they cannot crucify you if your hand is in a fist. And then,
they fucking can.
Yeah. The last one I wrote down was, should you find yourself contorting to fit a system, dear reader, stop and ask if it's truly you that must change, or the system. So it's all very kind of Bible-y and kind of this just, wow, this new way of thinking for the people down on the severed floor, right? Because up to this point, it's just work, work, work.
Yeah, it's also some of the things that, there was a lot of stuff that was, was Rickon's voice reading this stuff. And a lot of it was some kindergarten shit.
Well, yeah.
It was you're giving no one any sort of real advice. You're just stating the obvious.
No, but I agree with what you're saying, but it's a metaphor for things in real life where, this kind of new realized desperation, and you find these passages that at that point in your life are clicking, and you're probably going to give them a lot of weight because of, where you are in your life at this point. And even though it's kind of like some of them I think were pretty good, but some of them, like you said, were just oh, okay, Rickon, you fucking cheeseball. Are they fighting?
Yeah, because both want out the door.
So the next scene is Grainer slapping Petey's chip down on Cobell's desk, and he said that they did find proof that he was reintegrated and that she was right. And she asked him to find out who did it because she wants to make sure she has all the info when she takes it to the board. And we also find out that she hasn't informed the board about what happened with Helly either. So Cobell's kind of going off the rocker too. So now Mark is leaving for the day, and he grabs his mobile, and he sees that he has a bunch of missed calls from Rickon, and obviously he knows that his sister's probably in labor. Some of Rickon's messages are, Devin is at 4 centimeters. The baby's coming. If this is Mark's work self, tell him Rickon said to come quickly. Baby is heading down towards the birth canal. It'd be great if you're here. So you'd think these people have willingly severed themselves for this company. You think there would be some sort of system in place in case of emergencies, right? Like Middle Dick and Cobell obviously aren't severed. So there's some emergency number where they could go and throw someone in the elevator, in case of an emergency. But again, they don't give a fuck about them. So there's like nothing in place for that.
Yeah.
He gets to the birthing cabin, and he runs into the midwife that he went on a date with and apologizes for being an asshole on their date. And she tells him, Rickon is doing this thing where he cries over her. So I'm giving them some alone time.
Oh, Rickon is such a little bitch.
Oh, God, I know. And so we cut to them in the room, and he's just like quivering over Devin like a little baby, saying, I don't want to be like his father. It's just funny to me that, like we're saying, like kind of on the inside, Rickon is becoming this like wise person that, oh, these words mean so much. And then on the outside, he's just like this quibbling fucking idiot.
He's a mess. He's a fucking mess.
Yeah. So Mark walks in, and they're chit-chatting when a contraction comes on, and Rickon tells Mark they must share a secret because the fetus is drawn to clear air, and purging secrets can create a soul void that speeds the labor. And Mark's like, we want that?
One of my favorite parts was like, Mark, tell a secret quick. It's just like, no.
But he's like, I'll start. Mark, I love you, but I'm very hurt that you have not thanked me for the book. And Mark is like, what fucking book? I never got a book. He's like, must have been like stolen off my porch. And like Rickon starts losing his fucking mind that his advanced copy of his book might be stolen. Meanwhile, his wife is going through a very painful contraction, and he's just fucking ignoring her because he's so worried about his goddamn book.
Wife could possibly be in labor, and he's going through all the ways the book could not have gotten to Mark and why.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, take a long walk off a short bridge, man.
Yeah. Once the contraction is over, even Devin, you can tell, is just like, oh my God, this fucking guy. So she's like, I'm going to go out and get coffee. So she walks out, and Rickon looks at Mark, and he's like, can you help me hang the kelp?
Yeah. Let's make it known for the listeners. Devin is the woman in labor.
Yeah. Devin is Mark's sister.
She's the woman who's about to have the baby, and she's like, I can't fucking take this shit anymore. I'm going to go get some coffee.
Yeah. She can't even stand her husband at this point. So now Devin is kind of walking outside, and she's walking towards like the big fancy rich person's birthing cabin. And she sees this beautiful pregnant woman in the window in her silk robe. And she kind of just goes up to the window and like starts talking to the window. And she's like, I noticed your beautiful coffee, and I was wondering if I could have some. And the lady is like, I guess. But she lets her in. And Devin tells her that her husband is driving her crazy and her brother is depressing her. And then they just kind of start talking about kids and stuff. And I'm like, I'm wondering if this exchange is going to come back later, or if it was just a random scene.
I think it has to come back, because before she walked up to the window, there was a person out on the stoop, like on the balcony, and she was like trying to get the person's attention, and the person paid her no attention and walked off. Like that person walked off like she wasn't even there, and she was speaking pretty loud. So I'm wondering how this is going to tie in later.
Yeah,
I think
feel like
it will.
has to. Because they've made it a point to mention a few times the giant cabin next door. I know that's the rich people's
Yeah.
birthing cabin. And then even when she was talking to the woman, she was like, oh, this is my third child. We're going to name him William. Like, was very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not to the point, but like, like
assertive.
Made it known.
Like,
so I feel like this is going to come back somehow. So back in the cabin, Mark and Rickon are still hanging kelp, and Rickon is still talking about his missing book. And he says, if the thief reads it, he'll probably return it himself, because his words are so moving.
Rickon's a dumb shit.
He is. And then he says something to Mark about, I wish we could have given the baby Gemma, which is Mark's deceased wife.
Yeah.
Her, like, the middle name Gemma. And Mark was like, no, your baby deserves to have a name that doesn't have sad baggage attached to it. So when Devin returns to the cabin, Rickon is completely passed out, but she starts to have a contraction. So she asks Mark to squeeze her hand, and they're he jokingly is like, you want me to tell you a secret? And she just kind of laughed, and it was like, sure, give me your darkest shit. And he kind of gets serious, and he was like, I think Lumen is up to something. And she's like, what? Like with your paychecks? And he was like, no, I've been hearing things. And she seems kind of overly concerned. Like, who have you been talking to? But maybe she's just in the middle of a contraction. Like, who knows?
Well, also, she hates Lumen. She hates that he worked there. We saw that in one of the first episodes, that like she hates that he's there because it's a way for him to check out with everything.
And then he asked her, do you remember the businessman? And then right at that moment, her contraction gets worse, and Rickon wakes up. And then we like cut to Mark sitting like on a dock by the lake or some shit, like in the early morning. And we can hear her like going through labor in the background. And he's kind of flashing to like the cell phone ringing on his basement floor and Petey's face right before he collapsed. And we're assuming he died at that moment, but kind of just obviously in some sort of strife, I guess.
Yeah. He's definitely disturbed at that point.
Yeah. He's having some existential crisis. So at Lumen the next day, Middle Dick is explaining to Mark that this will be any Helly's first conscious experience since the hanging. And when she sees you, it's important your eyes be kind. Do you know how to make your eyes kind? And Mark just kind of stares at him and like tries, and he just looks all like crazy eyed and weird.
To do like puppy dog eyes. That's how. That's what I saw. Was like, oh, what about puppy dog eyes? Are these okay?
And it's not. It's not okay. But Middle Dick just stares at him and then sends him to the elevator anyway.
Yep.
So he's standing there when the elevator opens, but like as soon as Helly hits that severed level, her last memory there was basically dying, hanging. So she's in immediate panic, and the doors open and she's kind of like gasping for air, and Mark is standing over her, like telling her it's okay. And then he gives her some like serious fucking crazy eye, like trying to make his face kind, and he's just kind of like overly intently staring at her, and it's real creepy.
Yeah.
But obviously she calmed down, and they're sitting across from each other at a table, which I'm assuming is a break room or something. And Mark is explaining to her that they locked away all the extension cords and other dangerous items, and if she wants, she could focus on finding happy numbers for a while. And she just laughs at him. So he kind of like whispers, like, do you want to talk about it? And she just like gives him a dead look and gets up and walks away. She's not having any of it from Mark right now. Now we're back at the cubicles, and the gang is trying to come up with ideas to keep Helly happy. And of course, Irv suggests inspirational handbook quotes hidden around the office for her to find. And Dylan says she needs to start earning perks. I'd try to end my life if I didn't have any finger traps yet. Fucking Dylan. And while this is going on, Mark is again like trying to pull Rickon's book out from his filing cabinet when Miss Casey, the I guess psychiatrist, whatever the fuck she is, she just comes up and stands behind him, doesn't fucking say anything, just stands there until he notices her, and he kind of turns around and, like is startled. And she says, I'm here to observe Helly R., Miss Cobell's orders. I am to watch her for signs of sadness and verbally encourage her to forego any further suicide attempts. Upon request, I can also perform a hug. It's just so weird.
I am a robot.
Yeah. And then Dylan says he's been exhibiting some signs of sadness, and can he get one of those?
Yeah.
And she just matter-of-factly says, no.
No.
No. So now Miss Casey is sitting like 10 feet away from Helly, just fucking staring at her while she at her desk, and Helly's just kind of has her head resting in her hands, and she's just fucking pulling her eyelashes out and like flicking them down. And then she turns around and Miss Casey's just staring at her and writes something in her notebook, and Helly's like, did you get all that?
You get all that?
And Miss Casey asks Helly if she's upset. And she replies that she's just peachy. And then Miss Casey says, if you're upset, you can request. And Helly interrupts, a hug. I know. I'm good. So now we cut to Irving, and he's at his desk, and he's starting to fall asleep again. The numbers start kind of fading away, and then that black goop starts dripping in from the ceiling, and it's just kind of pouring everywhere, like cascading down from the ceiling. And Mark rolls back in his chair and turns to look at him, and it's like dripping from one of his eyes, and he's just like, Irving? And then Irving wakes up. There's no goop. This goop has to symbolize something too.
It's got to. Yeah, it's
like, I'm wondering if this is like their outside consciousness, like, like dripping in.
Yeah,
as
who
they
knows?
dream.
It's got to be something to do with the fucking
The chip.
little pill. Yeah, that chip being put in their head. It has to be.
We only have 4 episodes left. I hope all this shit starts coming together.
Oh, well, I mean, at least by 2025, we'll be done with this.
Right, with the rate we're going. So Irv is visibly upset that he fell asleep again, and he says he needs to go to O&D and seek Bert's counsel. Mark tells him to make a copy of the map just in case they have to come find him. So he goes over to the copy machine, and he puts the map down on the glass, hits copy, and instead of the map coming out, some crazy fucking painting.
Yeah, it's like a torture scene. Like people eating other people's insides and holding bloody knives. Like, it was fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's brutal. And it's people in like suits and ties, and they've got the Lumen badges on, and it's like, but it looks like a dark, like Renaissance painting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fucking weird. So he's like looking at it and was like, what the fuck? Irv is horrified, and he turns around and Middle Dick is just standing right there staring at him, and he's like, oh, no. I'm sorry, Irving. We must have sent this print job here by mistake. You weren't supposed to see this. And Irv is like, okay, but like, what the fuck is it? And he's like, just a joke for Miss Cobell. Then Irv is like on conspiracy theory mode, and he was like, but it's the O&D. Is this the O&D coup? Did that really happen, Mr. Middledick? And he's like, of course that could never happen here. And just kind of like walks away, but leaves the pictures with them, because now Irv is in the supply closet with Dylan showing him the picture. And Dylan thinks it's ironclad proof that O&D, had a coup and killed everybody, and that he can't trust his new friend because he's already lied about the size of his department. So there's definitely like
the size of his department.
Don't all men.
We know Irv and old O&D have a pretty close relationship.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's funny because there's just definitely unrest brewing everywhere now. All right, so Middle Dick is now like walking into a room or some weird hallway or something, and he runs into Cobell, who looks mad, but she always looks mad. And she asks him, she's like, you ran a 266 on Irving B? And he says yes, to dissuade him from spending so much time with Bert G. And should he have asked her permission first? So obviously he did this on purpose, so Irv would see the painting. And she says, no, it was good initiative. And then he asks her why Miss Casey was in MDR, and Cobell responds, the light of discovery shines truer upon a virgin meadow than a beaten path. We're like, okay. All right, bitch. And she's trying something new with Miss Casey, but not to tell anyone. So she's going rogue.
Yeah.
Everyone else is going rogue. Like, who the fuck's in charge here? But it's also interesting to see because I feel like up to this point, Miss Casey has felt like this, like she's one of the mind fuckers of everyone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But now I kind of feel like she's just another like weird little
Fucking
pawn.
robot.
Yeah. So now Helly is in the bathroom and she's at the sink and she gets her hands wet and she basically starts rubbing all the makeup off of her neck and exposing the big fucking bruises from the rope around her neck and just kind of staring at herself. And as she walks out, Miss Casey asks her to describe her time in the bathroom. Like, no.
Well, you know, I shit.
Yeah.
And then, you know, while I was shitting, a little pee came out.
But Mark to the rescue. He like overhears this exchange and he just dumps his coffee all over some notebooks or something. And he's like, oh no, I'm so sorry. You know, I just turned and it spilled or whatever. And Miss Casey just looks flustered and she's like, well, Helly will have to come with me to the distribution supply to get more notebooks. Mark's like, oh, it's only a couple minutes away. I can watch her while you go get it. And she's like, distribution supply is 8 minutes away. Round trip.
Round trip.
And they all just, they all just stare at each other. And she just walks off. So as soon as she leaves, Mark tells Helly, oh, I've never shown you where we keep the extra pen caps. Why do you need extra pen caps? One.
Yeah.
And apparently there's a whole supply of them.
Yeah. Do you only allow so many pins? And when you lose the cap, there's more caps?
Yeah, exactly.
What the fuck?
So they start walking off. She finally agrees to go with him. They start walking off and Dylan like leans back and he's like, be careful. Weird energy about. Yes, there is, Dylan. So now we cut to Miss Casey and she's briskly walking down the hallway and she's got a stack of new notepads and she walks past the conference room, but Bert is in there and he's like pacing back and forth and kind of talking to himself. And she kind of almost walks past, but then she stops and turns around and kind of looks at him. And you could tell she's trying to like formulate a thought in her head, but can't. So just like continues walking back to MDR. And now we cut to Mark and Helly wandering down the halls, and he asks her how she is. And she says, I'm really bad, Mark. Thanks for noticing. And then they walk into this weird room where there's like a bunch of desks that are covered and the floor is covered in plastic. And he shows her this map that he's been recreating, like basically Petey's map. And says, hey, maybe we can work together on this. Like, you know, he's trying to give her something, you know? And she looks at him and says, I'm not your new Petey, and just walks out. He starts following her down the hallway, but now they're in these weird hallways that aren't lit up. They only light up, the lights above you light up and then turn off as you walk down the hall. And it's all very creepy and weird and ominous.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty creepy.
Back at MDR, Miss Casey returns and concerned to find that Mark and Helly are gone. And they were like, they just went to go get pen caps or some shit. But she runs off to follow them. But before she leaves, she like stops and she turns around to Irv and she's like, Bert G is in the conference room. Which I don't understand. Why did she tell him that?
I was wondering that too. But also, she could be a fucking robot.
Yeah.
And wanted to test his resolve. Are you going to be able to stay away from the conference room? You know,
or is she concerned because she's heard the rumors of O&D coup, and so she's like, because I'm assuming this is the MDR conference room, right? And so she's like, oh, you know, enemy in the, I don't know, like it's strange.
Danger, Will Robbins.
Yeah. Beeper, beeper. So Irv, of course, is excited because he loves him some Bert G, and he goes to the conference room. And he kind of halfway opens the door and he's standing in the doorway talking to Bert. Like, Bert, why are you here? And I got turned around looking for you. That's my Christopher Walken impersonation. And then Dylan rushes up and pulls the door closed and like ties it with his belt to lock Bert in. And everything is starting to get really chaotic. And Irv's like, let him out. And Dylan says, what's wrong with you? You saw that painting. You want to get disemboweled today? Hey, where's your friends? plural, as in the 6 fucking people you've been hiding from us. And Irv is flustered and he runs off to try to find a manager. And he's screaming into the cameras that they need a manager. And Bert is yelling for him to come back. And Dylan is yelling at Bert. And like everyone's just yelling at each other. And it's all very crazy. And we got back to Mark following Helly down the weird hallways. And she says, I told her I wanted out. And she told me I wasn't a person. My own self told me that. And Mark says, yeah, and that's horrible. But don't focus on her. What do you want in here? And Helly says, what I want is for her to wake up while the life drains out of her and know it was me who did it. Damn, Helly.
Damn.
Helly is a bad bitch. I love her.
Is.
And then as soon as she says that, they hear, and they're both what the fuck? And they turn towards the noise. Now we're back in the crazy conference room scene. And Irv comes back saying like he checked the entire storage wing and he couldn't find Mark and Helly. And Dylan is convinced O&D already killed them. And Bert explains that he was practicing a joke in the conference room because Irv hadn't been back to see him. And he thought he might have scared him away with the hand thing. And Dylan tells him to prove it by telling him the joke. And then Irv whispers loudly through the door and he like kind of covers his mouth. And he's like, why didn't you tell me there were more people in your department? Bert tells him some people don't trust MDR because there are rumors.
Some people don't trust MDR.
And he's like, there are rumors that MDR have pouches. And Irv is like, what do you mean pouches? Like to carry young? And he's like, yeah, and that you all have larval offspring that will jump out and attack if you get too close. And they're just like, what the fuck? And Bert knows it's a joke, but he's like, somehow the sentiment holds. And then he proceeds with him assuming the joke that he was working on, or he clung on because he found a new joke. But he says, the stories go on to say that the larva eventually eats and replaces you, which Irv would explain your youthful energy. And they just kind of look at each other and giggle, and it's all very weird. And Dylan's mouth is just wide open, like, what in the actual fuck is going on here? Dylan pulls Irv away and says, are you sweet on this guy? And Irv answers, you disapprove? Certainly the handbook forbids taking heart to other employees. And Dylan says, rat fuck the handbook. This guy is O and goddamn D, who are duplicitous snakes to a 1. It's not safe. I don't know what duplicitous snakes to a 1 means, but that's what he said. It must be some sort of saying.
It must be. I don't know what it means.
I should have Googled it, but I did not. Duplicitous snakes to a 1.
So multiple snakes. This is multiple snakes acting as one.
Is that what duplicitous means?
I have no idea. I mean, I would say duplicitous comes from duplicates. That's got to be like the root word, duplicates.
I always thought duplicitous meant like studious, but I am probably very wrong. I'm going to Google it right now. Treacherous. Okay. Duplicitous means treacherous, duplicitous behavior.
Oh, okay.
You can't use the word in the fucking meaning. Or it could be a law term meaning a charge or a plea containing more than one allegation. So that would make sense. So like duplicates
it into one.
Okay. So now we're back to Helly and Mark. They keep hearing that animal sound and they're following it, and then they come upon a baby goat just walking down the hallway. And they follow it into this room, and it's like an overall empty room, except there's some hay and a large man in a business suit sitting in a chair, bottle feeding a goat. Like without even looking
at them yet.
Yeah, they're not ready. You can't take them. It isn't time. And they're just looking at him. They're like, and he's like, get out of here. And they just kind of like turn around and run away. If there's some fucking goat sacrifices in these upcoming episodes, I'm going to be very upset.
I know.
But I feel like this is where this is leading.
Who knows? I mean, I don't know. If there's not, what the fuck was that whole scene about? You know, like, why have them walk into a room where guys holding a goat like a baby and feeding it out of a bottle.
Yeah. And yeah, I know
But also, there's a
big
lot of
ethical
this
shit.
show that doesn't make sense yet.
Yeah. So now we're back to Irv and Bert walking down a hallway, and Dylan is just kind of following behind them, and they have basically bound Bert's hands behind his back with the belt. And I guess Irv was asking Bert about the painting that he saw in the printer, and Bert says, "The grim barbarity of optics and design, that's what it said? There's certainly no painting by that name. What kind of barbarities were we enacting?" And Irv says it doesn't matter because it's not real, but he'll confer with his larva, and they giggle. And they stop at the O&D door, and Irv says that relationships beyond the platonic are frowned upon. And Bert asks him if that's what they are. And then Dylan clears his throat. And Bert asks them to come into O&D because there's something he wants to show him. And Dylan's like shaking his no. And Irv is like, yeah, come on. So they end up going in, and Irv and Bert are looking at a painting of a man and a woman, and it's like a man standing over like a huge vat, something hot that he's stirring, and the woman just kind of looking up at him lovingly. And the name of this painting is The Courtship of Keir and Imogen. Bert says he met his wife while a stewman in an ether factory. She was a swab girl. And as Irv and Bert are looking at it, Dylan's wandering around the aisles. And Irv says, the handbook just says they were bonded by the spirit of industry. And Bert says, I know, but if this interpretation is correct, they met as colleagues, took heart to each other as colleagues. And as they're saying this, Dylan opens a drawer and he sees the actual painting of what was printed by Middle Dick. And Irv and Bert are still kind of talking about, oh, blah, 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 they're falling in love. And their hands are about to touch again. And then Dylan runs up and yells, get away from him, you lying fuck. He claims he doesn't know about this painting. Meanwhile, it's sitting on his shelf. And Irv grabs the painting and says, but it's not the same. The badges the Raiders are wearing aren't O&D. It's us. And Bert explains that this has never gone on display, and it's called the Macro Data Refinement Calamity.
Oh, dang.
2 versions of the same painting to perpetuate the rumors of the other departments.
Maybe that's the whole experiment of this show, is like, how can we turn different departments against each other?
Or just people, like how easy is it to manipulate people to like be fearful, and probably at some point I'll kill each other. Who knows?
Eat the other people.
Yes. But Dylan's like, we've never done anything like that. Why would there be 2 versions of the same painting? And they all just look at each other. So Mark and Hallie are still walking around the weirdly lit hallways. And she says, I mean, what if the goats are the numbers? Like, we're deciding which goats live and which ones, oh God. And Mark replies, I doubt it's that. Look, I don't know, or I know you don't want to be here, but I'm glad you are. And I'm sorry that this is the best I can do right now. And she kind of softens a little bit and she replies, give me the map, I'll clean it up. Your drawing is shit. And just then, Miss Casey kind of frantically walks up and finds them. And Mark was like, oh, hey, Miss Casey, we were just heading back from our mental health walk. And she said she was worried that they would get hurt. And he was like, no, we're fine. We're sorry. And she's, I forgive you. And she just turns and walks away. Very weird. And so they're walking back, and we cut to Cope Bell, who is watching all 3 of them walk down the hall on the surveillance cameras, when Grainer opens her door and asks if she knows what MDR is up to. And she says, that's what you're paid for. And when he asks if she's going to put a stop to it, she says, the surest way to tame a prisoner is to let him believe he's free. And Grainer says, there's a Keir quote for everything. And he wants to know how many more departments she's going to let them discover. And that upstairs wouldn't look very kindly on this. And she says, yes, Daddy. Just weird.
Yeah.
And then she's basically like, don't talk to me again until you find out who fucking reintegrated Petey. So he leaves, and now we're back in O&D, and Bert takes Irv and Dylan into this big, huge secret room, which looks like, I don't know, there's a bunch of weird machines kind of going down this whole room, and the 7 other people or 6 other people working in there. And he says, "Excuse me, everyone. I want to introduce you all to Irving and Dylan. They're MDR." And everyone looks a little kind of weirded out. And he says, "And they're friends."
Yeah.
And that is the end of the episode. I don't even know what the fuck is happening.
I think this show is going, like, you're going to know what's happening at the end of the last episode.
Ever. Not this season.
They're going to keep it so, they're going to keep it so tight-lipped and weird that there's nothing you're going to learn from any of this. You're only going to be able to make like speculation of what's going to happen.
And there's just so many like underlying themes going on. Like there's the religious thing. There's the fucking like work, just fucking shut up and work thing. And the social, like there's so many layers.
And that woman that's a robot. I guarantee she's a robot. She's not real. She's a robot.
Miss Casey?
Yes. She is a robot.
Because she hasn't shown 1 fucking ounce of emotion. Oh.
And yet she's supposed to be like the psychiatrist kind of thing. Uh-oh, what happened?
Little mama's crying. But Miss Cobell also shows no emotion ever, even when she's upset.
Yeah,
unless she's like throwing a shoe at someone.
I kind of see the break in her because she's allowing them to wander around and discover all this stuff. And she's watching them on cameras, obviously. She's not doing anything. And I think the fact that Petey, like they know now Petey got reintegrated. I think she's it kind of flipped a switch in her,
Yeah.
And again, this is all speculation, which is all you can do with this show. You can only speculate because you never know where it's going to go.
Yeah. The nice thing about having a shit fucking memory is my brother said some major spoiler alerts when we were in Catalina, and I've completely fucking forgotten what he said. I don't
remember any of that.
I don't think you were sitting there at the time. But I was like, shut up. We haven't gone that far. But I don't remember what the fuck he said. So I'm still clueless as to what's going to come up.
Yeah.
But thanks, patron fuckers, for listening, sticking with us and being patient with us. We appreciate you. And hopefully the next episode won't be 5-6 weeks from now.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right. Bye, fuckers.
Bye, fuckers. Thanks for listening to the Fuck My Work Life podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please consider rating us on your favorite podcast platform. We love to hear your workplace stories, so send them our way to fmwlpod@gmail.com or leave us a message at 310-818-3273. For more fun content, follow us on TikTok, Threads, and Instagram at fmwlpod. You can also chat with us and your fellow fuckers on our Discord channel. You can find all our links in the show notes. Until next time, bye, fuckers.